Dear students, in this class I want to teach you the 10 most important verbs in English. So the first 5 or 6 verbs are obviously the most important ones in English, right? Those are arguably the most important ones. However, maybe the 4 last ones or 5 last ones, depends. Those can be a bit more controversial because some lists may include these same ones, some other lists may include perhaps some other verb that is not included in this list. So, my list of the 10 most important verbs in English will include the first 5 that are arguably the most important ones, and the first 5 and the last 5 that are, in my opinion, the most important ones. However, I do realize the great relevance of other verbs that are not included here, like the verb to come, for example, to see, to look. Okay? So let's begin. The first verb in our list, obviously, is the verb to be. The verb to be corresponds exactly to the verb ser and estar from Spanish. So every time we have the verb ser or the verb estar in Spanish, in English we would use exactly the verb to be. And the verb to be has also one other use. In Spanish, when we want to indicate the existence of something, like for example, hay mucha agua aquí. Okay? This hay, which in Spanish, hay comes from the verb haber, in English we use the verb to be together with the word there. We say there is to indicate hay, there was to indicate hubo, and there will be to indicate habrá. Okay? Our second most important verb is the verb to have. To have is equal to the verb haber or tener in Spanish. Why haber? In Spanish, the verb haber is the auxiliary verb that is used for some verbal tenses, okay? Like present perfect, past perfect, all those tenses that require the use, the participation of an auxiliary verb. In Spanish we use the verb haber. For example, yo he ido, tú has comido, okay? And in English, for this case, we would use the verb to have as the natural auxiliary verb. For example, I have eaten, I have gone, I will have seen. Okay? So, to have is the auxiliary verb in English for verbal tenses, for conjugations. Plus, the verb to have also is used to indicate possession of something, in the same manner that in Spanish we use the verb tener. So, for example, in Spanish we would say, tengo un auto azul. In English we use the verb to have, and we say, I have a blue car. Okay, our third verb is a very important modal verb. As you may know, because I have explained it in some of my lessons, English has 5 modal verbs: will, can, must, may, and shall. Out of these, will is the most important one. Why? Will is the modal verb that is used always, or almost always, for building sentences in the future tense. Okay? For example, if we want to say yo comeré, we would say I will eat. We use the verb will. So why did I say almost always? Because there is another way of building the future tense using the verb to go, we can say. In the same way, in Spanish, we can say yo comeré or yo voy a comer. In English, we can say I will eat or I am going to eat. Okay, our fourth verb is the verb to do. To do literally means hacer, okay? I will do something. Yo voy a hacer algo. But to do has another huge function in the English language. It is the auxiliary verb that we use for question sentences and for negative sentences, okay? Except those sentences that are in the future. So, question sentences and negative sentences in the future tense, they do not use to do because instead they use the verb to will, which will always be there for sentences in the future tense. Okay, our fifth verb, the verb to can, the verb can, because we don't include the word to, that particle to, before the modal verbs. And can is a modal verb, same as will. So we say can. Can means poder, okay? For example, I can go, yo puedo ir, or I cannot go, yo no puedo ir, okay? Very simple verb, but extremely useful. Also, can be used as a conditional. For example, could, the past of can is could, and it's used for conditional. I could go if I had money. Yo podría ir si tuviese dinero, okay? Same as the verb will can also be used for conditional, as would. I would go if I wanted to. Yo iría si tuviese ganas. I would go if I wanted to. Okay, let's continue with the verb to go. To go literally means ir, in every sense. I want to go. Yo quiero ir. She won't go to the party. Ella no va a ir a la fiesta. I am going to go to eat. Yo voy a ir a comer. I am going to stay. Yo voy a quedarme. Okay? Next, the verb to want. The verb to want is querer. Exactly, querer. For example, I want to go to the party tonight. Yo quiero ir esta noche a la fiesta. Then we have the verb to make. The verb to make also means hacer. However, to make and to do are synonyms, but they are not used in the same situations. So, to make and to do both mean hacer, but there are very specific rules to tell us when we have to use the verb to do and when we have to use the verb to make. Okay? So in my Spanish lesson, in my English lesson number 10, I think it was, I have clearly explained the rules to know when we use the verb to do and when we use the verb to make. Okay? For example, I made a very important decision. I made a very important decision. Yo tomé o yo hice una decisión muy importante. ¿Sí? Okay. To like. Gustar de. Okay? In Spanish, we use the verb gustar with the preposition de. Right? Yo gusto de algo. Or we use the verb gustar as a reflexive verb. Lo usamos como verbo reflexivo. For example, a mí me gusta el chocolate. Okay? In English, we use the verb to like simply like any other regular verb. For example, I like green apples. A mí me gustan las manzanas verdes. I like chocolate very much. A mí me gusta mucho el chocolate. I don't like you. No me gustas. Okay? And our last verb is the verb to get. The verb to get means obtener. So, it's a very important verb, not only because of its per se meaning, but also because to get is the root of many other phrasal verbs that are built from the verb to get, like get up, get down, get on, etc. Okay? So, there are many very important phrasal verbs that are built from the verb to get. That's why I have included the verb to get in our list of the 10 most important English verbs. Okay? So, this is the end of today's class. Don't forget to write if you have any questions, any doubts, or any suggestions, and as usual, I will be glad and happy to reply all your questions. Thank you, and I see you in the next class. Goodbye.